pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This is a continuation of the January meeting begun last Tuesday. I had called for the vote, and we had completed the vote on combined items 8 and 12. The result of that, those in favor, 198. Somebody trying to get my attention. Those in favor, 198, opposed 0, abstaining 1. Those combined items 8 and 12 have carried. We were in the process of taking up item 6. Before we continue with that, I hope everyone saw an email that I sent out this morning to the district and committee chairs regarding the parking issue. It will be an issue for us going forward. We did explore, I was contacted by the assistant fire chief after our meeting last week about the problems of the fire trucks getting to the back of this building because of cars parked illegally. And then I just learned today actually that the Baptist Church has closed off their lot to us. Alexis Vulgaris contacted them, investigated, and apparently they are renting out the facility on Monday nights. So going forward, that will not be available to us. And the encouragement is to carpool if you can. I don't know what the available parking slots are here, but I assume it's going to be very tight without that lot across the street. So going forward, please consider coming with someone else in your district. It will help alleviate that issue. All right, were there any administrative matters we needed to take up first? Okay, so I also hope everyone is aware of the additional item. We've numbered it item 13 regarding the tax extension for federal employees. Since our town attorney has informed us that this being a continuation of a regular meeting, we can take non-agenda items up if we first consider a motion to consider a non-agenda item and adopt it by a 2/3 majority. So that will come at the end of the meeting. That is item number 13. So remaining, we have items 6, 7, 11, and this additional item 13 if we decide to take it up by 2/3 majority. We return now to item 6, which is, Mr. Eddy, why don't you go ahead and summarize it again for us, please?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, everybody. Mr. Moderator, we have the substitute resolution from last week, or should I read that again?
Why don't you read it again?
Okay. The substitute resolution is resolved that the following named person nominated by the Appointments Committee be appointed alternate member A2 of the Labor Contracts Committee for a term expiring 12/31/2019, and that's Daniel Ozenberg.
All right, and that just added the designation A2, is that right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And I neglected to mention, there are sign-up sheets for items 6 and 7. Item 7 is still out there. I was just handed item 6 from the back of the hall. There is another one up front if anyone wants to get on that list. All right, that being offered on behalf of our Labor Contracts Committee does not require a second. Mr. Eddy, the report of your committee.
This is the report of the Appointments Committee, which nominated Mr. Ozenberg. I started going through the entire appointments process last week, and it'll take me about 10 minutes. I'm not going to do that tonight, but if anyone has any questions about what the Appointments Committee does and why it does it, please give me a call or send me an email with respect to the process. So Daniel Ozenberg was nominated by the Appointments Committee to serve as alternate member A2 on the Labor Contracts Committee for the remainder of a 2-year term that was previously held by Robert Burns. The term is consistent with that of the RPM. little bit of background. The role of the Labor Contracts Committee is primarily to advise the RTM to the desirability of ratifying all labor contracts and review personnel policy and compensation practices, including fringe benefits. This is all listed in the RTM rules. Just quickly going it over here for you. In addition to Mr. Ozismir, Glenn Canner and Aaron Leonard, RTM members, were also people who the Appointments Committee interviewed. Mr. Canner has a background as a trial lawyer in employment law, and Mr. Leonard is a criminal attorney. Before the Appointments Committee interviewed these candidates, Joshua Brown, the chair of the Labor Contracts Committee, provided your Appointments Committee with some background on the committee and gave some guidance on where he felt the committee would benefit from specific expertise. Apparently none of the candidates really fit that expertise exactly. Mr. Ozimir presented an analysis of the town's health care costs to the Appointments Committee, about 50 pages long. He has served on the RTM since 2012 and currently serves as vice chair of the Budget Overview Committee. He has assisted the town labor negotiator in quantifying health care and labor costs. And with the Appointments Committee, he discussed how his research, analysis, and presentation skills would improve the town's position in the event of arbitration. His impressive education and career information were available on the call. And your Appointments Committee had 4 options. They could choose any 3 or none of the candidates. Mr. Ozimir received 9 votes. Another candidate received 3, and another received 0. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have our Finance Committee.
Good evening. I'm Mike Basham, Vice Chairman of the Finance Committee. Dan presented himself to us a week ago Monday, explained his background in great detail. A lot of us were familiar with his background. He does a lot of work for the RTM. We had a lot of discussion. Josh, Chairman of the LCC, who's also a member of the Finance Committee, made comments similar to those that he made to the Appointments Committee. After discussion and consideration of Dan's background, the committee voted 11-0-1 to approve him.
Thank you. All right, so now is the time to have discussion on this. Mr. Tudhill, you wanted to offer a motion? Could you stand, please?
To limit debate for the remainder of the meeting to 3 minutes per person.
Okay, is there a second? Mr. Tudhill has moved, and it has been seconded to limit debate for the rest of the meeting on all items to come before us to 3 minutes per speaker. Motion to limit debate is not itself debatable and requires a 2/3 majority to pass. All those in favor of limiting?
Point of clarification, if you could.
Yeah,
That's
Mr. Brown?
For any item, a total of 3 minutes. So if I spend a minute on one and a minute on another and a minute on another, that's 3, or I
No,
spend
no, no,
3
no.
minutes on the first? and
So 3 minutes for item 6, 3 minutes for item 7. Mr. Tudhill, if a motion comes up for an item, shall we say 3 minutes per item, per speaker? Meaning
I
per,
understand you, Mr. Moderator. I was saying 3 minutes per person per item.
so let's identify item. Item being whatever is pending before us for a vote. It could be a motion to postpone, for example. And if that's defeated, then we would take up the merits, so someone could speak on both of those for 3 minutes each.
I said 3 minutes per item.
Well, that's what I'm trying to identify. Do you define item?
Item 6, 7, 11,
Okay,
13.
that is his motion. Everyone understands what we're voting on?
Yes.
So if more than one motion comes up for item 6, for example, someone who had already spoken for 3 minutes could not speak again.
No,
If we adopt this motion to limit debate.
not appropriate. Each one stands.
Well, this is not debatable. I just want to make sure everyone understands what we're voting on.
And vote against it.
So I will now call for the vote. If you are in favor of limiting debate to 3 minutes per speaker for item 6, for items 7, 11, and 13, you should vote in favor of this. If you are opposed, you vote no. All those in favor of Mr. Tuthill's 3-minute limit, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. All right, it's a 2/3 majority that's required, and that's close enough. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? Rising votes are too hard and too inaccurate. Please mark your voting cards. Tuthill motion to limit debate. And quickly poll your delegation, please. All right. Now, let me tell you, for this item, I do have a speaker list with 29 names on it. That might influence your vote. All right. Now, is there anyone on this list who is prepared to speak for 3 minutes? While we're voting, we can begin with the debate. Joe Benoit, District 5, you care to start us off? I'm going to hold you to 3 minutes. If you don't want that now, you can pass, and I'll come back to you. Joe Benoit.
Mr. Moderator, fellow RTM members, can everybody hear me? Good. I rise to speak in favor of Dan Osamir. I'm on District 5. I'm also on the Appointments Committee. When we met with Mr. Osamir, he was very factual about his qualifications. Being on District 5, I am aware of the thoroughness that he puts forth on doing the work that he does for the RTM. He is very, very good on what he puts together and how he puts it together, and he's very good on communicating that to us. I've heard it said already that nobody is questioning his qualifications. So if that's the case, then what is the issue? I've heard it said through other people that, well, he's also he's vice chair of another committee. Well, we have many people who are on more than one committee. I myself, I'm on appointments. I'm also your representative to the Harbor Commission. There are a lot of people here that serve on more than one committee. If Mr. Brown is the one who is leading this charge.
All right, we don't single out people by name.
If the individual who is leading the charge is also a chair of the district, they are on the governance committee, and I would think the governance committee would be the area to take this up on, not to single out an individual to go this way. That's why we put together the governance committee. So I would think that would be the right avenue to go on, not this avenue here. I think the man is well qualified to do this job. He has expressed an interest. When he came before us at the appointments committee, this was, I think, the 3rd time that he had applied for this position. Obviously, he wants to do this. If he didn't have this desire, he wouldn't have come forth like this. So I'm urging you to vote for Mr. Osamir. I think he will serve us all well. Thank you.
Thank you. Patty Roberts to be followed by Lucy Von Brackle, and if anyone doesn't want to be limited to 3 minutes at the moment, you can just say pass. And I'd ask the following speaker to come forward.
Good evening. I'm Patty Roberts. I'm also from District 5, so maybe we're going to get all District 5 done at the beginning. During the 3 years that I've been on, I've known Dan. I found him to be fair, direct, hardworking, and inclusive.
I'm sorry.
Whether I was a branch manager, a department manager, a regional manager, or ran an insurance company, I always sat back and said, I want to make sure that whoever I bring into the company or whoever I promote raises the average. And putting Dan into this position does that. He knows the budget and the finance drivers of the Greenwich budget inside and out, and as such, he would be an asset to the labor contract. And I concur with Joe. I've served on 2 committees. I've served on 3 committees. The reality is many of the smaller districts have to have people serve on multiple committees, and it's the people who volunteer and put the time in that deserve the appointment. So I urge you to vote for Dan to get on to the labor contracts. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy Von Brackle, to be followed by Michael Spilo.
Good evening. redundancy of EOC and finance leadership on labor contracts. We are a representative body. This overlap and inherent duplication of the views of a small minority of RTM members give a handful of people an outsized voice and limits the representative nature of the RTM. EOC and finance already take up and report to the RTM on labor contracts. If their leaders are also on LCC, we run the risk of hearing the same opinion twice. I would argue that a rule to prevent overlap in leadership between any of the committees would benefit us all and allow more of us an opportunity to take on leadership roles. In my view, the RTM's powers as far as the budget is concerned may be limited to cutting, reducing, and approving, but I believe our purpose is more nuanced than that. Our purpose is to represent our constituents by ensuring that the town spends wisely. But in our focus on reducing costs, what is often lost is an analysis of the returns we reap from our investments. To give you an example, we are all acutely aware of the costs relating to labor contracts and that they are enormous and a growing part of our budget. But to focus solely on the expense ignores the fact that town employees contribute a lot to the prosperity and character of Greenwich. Their work is essential to our high property values and the town's revenue. Meanwhile, a majority of town employees cannot afford to live here. Those that do live here are represented by us. And I suspect that many of the people in this room are current employees of the town or former employees of the town. The role of the LCC, as I understand it, is to review and interpret bargaining agreements and bring it back to this group with some advice on how to vote. Although the responsibilities of LCC do not include mention of its playing an advisory role for the Director of Labor Relations, there is some history of LCC and other RTM committees doing so. Just lost my place. Anyway, if I had my druthers, the LCC would, like all labor relations boards and commissions regulated by state statute, include at least one current or former town union member. And the Appointments Committee would do what they can to ensure that LCC has a varied mix of experience and views that are more representative of the diversity of the RTM. Therefore, I'm voting no on this appointment, not for personal reasons, but because I believe it contradicts the purpose of the RTM, and I hope that Appointments will take this up again with the views expressed here tonight in mind.
Michael Spilo, to be followed by Paul Olmsted.
I am currently an alternate on the LCC, and I volunteered for the LCC because I think we needed some more innovative thinking and a broader experience with negotiation, which I think the LCC was lacking. As a current LCC member, I feel that our negotiations and analysis have been focused on some of the wrong metrics and the wrong benchmarks, and overly focused on contractual details. Those are very basic errors. I can tell you that there's also little or no continuity and no record keeping within the LCC, and these are managerial errors. And I feel that these are areas which would benefit from the managerial experience and background of someone like Dan. Dan, I'm familiar with Dan's extensive work on the RTM. His diligence, his fair-mindedness, and his attention to detail have been an asset to our deliberations. And I think he will be a valuable addition to the LCC. I hope you'll vote for him.
Paul Olmsted, to be followed by Glenn Canner.
Speak up.
Good evening. I'm here to add my support to Dan's nomination. Dan's from my district. Our kids attended elementary school together. I know he'll be a strong addition to the Labor Contracts Committee, and I hope he'll stand with the strong endorsement by the Appointments Committee and by the Finance Committee. Dan's a hard worker. His efforts will help the committee. He'll look at labor contracts from all perspectives because he understands that success in contract negotiations means looking for win-win solutions. He should be on the Labor Contracts Committee not because he's on the budget overview, but because he's again, a hard worker. And I think he understands finance, which is also important because labor contracts are at a very high proportion of our total, the town's expense. It's surprising to me that the chairman of a committee, we'd want a chairman of the committee to decide what members ought to be on the committee or who should be on the committee. We should be looking for qualified people who are willing to serve
Glenn Cannon, to be followed by Catherine Ashworth.
Good evening. My name is Glenn Canner. I'm from District 12. I applied for this position. I did not get the most votes, but I learned some things in the process which I would like to share with you. Before attending appointments, I put in a call to Al Cava, the town labor negotiator, and he was gracious enough to call me back. And I said that I have been on claims for 10 years, and in claims, we essentially act as a sounding board for the town attorney, board of directors, whatever. I said, what are you looking for on labor contracts? He said he wants to honor the wishes of the town. The RTM speaks for the town. He cannot practically speak to 230 RTM members. So he would hope that the Labor Contracts Committee would reflect the diversity of the RTM. I attended the appointments meeting on December 4. During that meeting, the Budget Oversight Chair was there in the audience, very forcefully arguing that the Budget Oversight Vice Chair should get on labor contracts. The Labor Contracts Vice Chair was there and was as forcefully arguing that labor contracts should not become captive to budget oversight and finance. And that if Budget Oversight Chair, Oversight Vice Chair, and Finance Chair get on labor contracts will be controlled by budget oversight. My biggest concern is that I have sat on claims for 10 years. Claims and labor contracts are the two special committees. Significantly, both of these committees do most of their work in executive session. The biggest job we have as an RTM is to pass a budget. We are supposed to be open and transparent.
30 seconds.
And it concerns me that if this goes through, that the Budget Oversight Chair, Budget Oversight Vice Chair, and Finance Chair will be spending substantial time behind closed doors in executive session with respect to matters related to the budget. To the extent possible, I submit that labor contract
Thank you.
should be separate from budget oversight. Thank you.
Catherine Ashworth, to be followed by Ella Cohen.
Hi, I'm Catherine Ashworth, District 1, and I just want to throw my support behind Dan Mosesmere. I've known Dan for more than a decade, and we speak the common language of data. And I think that that is invaluable on this committee. And in terms of getting a broader perspective on that data, I think it's important for everyone who is on a committee with anyone else to challenge the numbers and the thinking behind them, but having someone who is willing to do that work and provide the deep comparisons to other markets that I know Dano does. He's so hardworking, and I trust him to do a good job.
Ella Cohen, to be followed by Ashley Smith.
Hi, my name is Ella Cohen, and I'm also from D5. I'm here in support of Dan as an alternate member for Labor Contracts Committee. As we all know by now, he's vice chair of the VOC. During my time on the RTM, I have been consistently impressed by Dan's commitment to the VOC, the RTM, and the town of Greenwich. His reports are clear and extremely thorough. He has always been happy to explain the reports in greater detail and to answer any questions. In short, he understands the budget and the town's finances. Through my time on RTM, I've learned that Dan is extremely dedicated to this town, and I'm very pleased that he's willing to dedicate even more of his time and financial expertise, especially since labor represents between 70 and 80% of the town's budget. Why wouldn't we want someone with 3 decades of financial expertise and with a thorough knowledge of Greenwich's budget and process to be on the LCC? Some of the concerns that I have heard about Dan's appointment don't have anything to do with his qualifications, but pertain to the fact that he already serves on the BOC and therefore should not be appointed to labor contracts. There is no prohibition against the members serving on both committees. If the rules of the RTM change, then Dan, like other RTM members who serve in multiple capacities, would of course have to make a decision. Another concern is that Dan is not a lawyer. While there's no requirement that lawyers comprise the LCC, there are already 4 lawyers on the committee. Why is there a call for more? As you know, the town is already capably represented by in-house and outside counsel if necessary. It is more important to have someone who understands finances than another attorney on the LCC. To reiterate what others have said, there is an extensive vetting process that precedes a candidate vote before the full RTM. Dan has been through this process and received 9 favorable votes from appointments and 11 from finance. He is fully qualified to serve on this committee and should be given the opportunity to do so. Please vote to confirm Dan to the LCC. Thank you.
Ashley Smith, to be followed by Dr. Carl Carlson.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Smith, and I am also a member of District 5 with Dan. Dan is very thoughtful, intelligent, and dedicated. We are very fortunate to have him not only as a member of District 5, but as a greater member of the RTM. As for the LCC appointment under consideration, I understand there's concern about a concentration of skill set and leadership. Let us not forget that this is a volunteer position, and we have to pick from the people who are willing to volunteer their skills and time. As evidenced by the Appointments Committee vote, Dan is the most qualified of the volunteers. And frankly, we should be grateful and excited that someone of his intelligence and skill set has and is willing to volunteer and dedicate more of his time to the RTM. Please endorse the Appointment Committee's vote and confirm Dan to the LLC. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Carl Carlson, to be followed by Candace Garthwaite.
Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM, Mr. Ozdemir is a fine candidate. He has come before the Appointments Committee a number of times, and he has always been very well received by the committee. I have served in the committee now for 24 years, and I would like to suggest that he is one of the best people to come through. I would like to point out that the Labor Contracts Committee was for a number of years very concentrated in membership from District 10, or people who have been members of District 10 who moved to another district. Concentration may not hurt, but in this case, we need some new blood in Labor Contracts Committee. Let's remember what happened a few years ago, that Labor Contracts Committee voted 4-1 in favor of a contract that was basically rejected or postponed indefinitely by the RTM. We need a bit of change. We need a change in the direction of younger people. I maintain this fine young man is a person who he get a lot of work out of for the town of Greenwich. And what we should do is we should utilize him in this position. And I think the best thing we can do tonight is to pass him on through. And I wish him well. This is, after all, just an alternative position. And so it's like a candidate membership. And we're going to see how he does for the rest of the year. Thank you.
All right, I suppose I need to tell you the result of that vote. Those in favor, this was the 3-minute Tufhill motion. Those in favor, 102, opposed 61, abstaining 6. Requires a 2/3 majority. We don't count abstentions for purposes of determining the supermajority. So there were 163 votes, 2/3 of which is 108.7, which means 109 was required. We got 102 yes votes. So the motion has failed for lack of a 2/3 majority. Candace Garthwaite, to be followed by Mike Basham.
Good evening. My remarks are very short, so I can make up for some of those longer speakers. Basically, I've RTM is designed to be a nonpartisan body, and we're elected to make good decisions for the residents of the town of Greenwich. And that's a balancing act for sure. And that's why we spend a lot of time here sometimes on Monday nights. So, my concern is that for all of our committees, and also for the boards and commissions and agencies that the Appointments Committee, is responsible for passing through onto us, is that we do keep in mind a balance, on those boards and committees and commissions. Within the RTM, it's a little tougher because we have a smaller talent pool. So that part I really get. And so, we're asking of these committee members to do important research and ask the right questions and advise us on the pros and cons of the various items before us. So how can we make sure that the Labor Contracts Committee is a balanced committee? Looking to protect taxpayer dollars, absolutely for sure, and to make sure we have the best talent in the areas of safety, health, education, and administration. This is not always simple, and it's not easy. And so what I would ask of all members of all the committees is that we're looking for unbiased analysis that is presented as such and not presented as a philosophy. And so that we can continue, so with that, we can continue to make good decisions for the town. So it's my hope that this nominee and all members of the Labor Contracts Committee can do that and present their analysis, which is fantastic and much appreciated, but also make sure that we're looking for that balanced presentation so that we can make the decisions that are best for the people that we represent.
Mike Bash, and be followed by Monica Prohoda.
Good evening again. I'm also from District 5. I'd like to speak briefly about the labor contract process and why I think Dan is an excellent, exceptional candidate to be an alternate on LCC. In my career, I've had the opportunity to either negotiate or evaluate public employee contracts, both at the federal government level, the state level, as well as the local level. And I've got some understanding of the process and what I consider the important skill sets, they go into that require negotiations to be effective. And it's important to understand that it doesn't matter whether the process is collaborative, whether it's adversarial, or even the scope of the issues that are being debated and negotiated. I think what's important and what it comes down to from the perspective of both parties are the financial issues. And these can run the gamut from the GWI, the general wage increase that we all hear about, to minor things like the number of bereavement days, or even how do you define a pensionable asset. All of these things have a financial impact. And with personnel costs in the town being approximately 73% of our total budget, we need people who have a strong understanding of the town's finances to help shape our negotiating policies and to evaluate the contracts, the final contracts impact on the budget. This is a reason that the nominees for the LCC are referred to the Finance Committee for vetting and approval. To say that Dan understands the town's finances better than most of us on the RTM doesn't do justice to the amount of work that he puts into it. There is no doubt in my mind that he attends more BET meetings than anyone else on the RTM, and he makes time to attend many BOE as well as pension board meetings. Dan is also the primary author and editor, for those of you who have been to this budget workshop that the BOC puts on in the spring. Dan is the guy that puts this together. I think it's safe to say that few, if any of us on the RTM work as hard or know the town's financial position and budget drivers better than Dan. And more importantly, he doesn't keep this information to himself. He shares it with everybody, with those of us in the RTM, BET, BOE, and the citizens he talks to. He works hard on behalf, he would work hard on the LCC, and Greenwich will certainly benefit from all that hard work. More importantly, I think it's important for people to realize Dan understands the importance of knowing what is important to the town's employees. He's been in management and managed large numbers of people before in the private sector. You want to have happy people to be successful, and I think we want to have happy employees in the town. I think he'll study the issues and you know, he'll bring a lot to bear in terms of understanding, bring a lot to bear, a lot of information to the RTM and understanding the votes that we have to take. More importantly, he knows that neither side in a municipal negotiating process ever wins big or loses big. He knows that win-win outcomes, when they're available to us, when they're possible, are always the best outcome for taxpayers as well as the employees. When the Appointments Committee issued an open call to the RTM that specified the criteria for candidates interested in serving as an alternate, Dan and 2 other candidates responded. At the Appointments Committee, the LCC chairman, Josh Brown, voiced his concerns about the lack of diversity of opinion on the LCC. Dan, along with 2 other candidates, were interviewed extensively by the committee, and Dan was elected on the first ballot with 9 of the 12 votes. His nomination was then referred to Finance, and Josh, again a member of the Finance Committee, made the committee aware of his concerns about the lack of diversity of opinion, as well as he had expressed some concerns as well about the number of votes that both the BOC and the Finance Committee would have on the LCC. For your information, there are currently 2 voting members from Finance on the LCC, both Josh, who at one point was also vice chairman of the Finance Committee, and Rob Pirelli-Minetti, who is the current chairman of the Finance Committee. And there's 1 from BOC, that would be Lucia Jansen. After additional questions and discussions in the Finance Committee, the committee approved Dan's nomination as an alternate by a vote of 11-0-1, with Josh being the abstention. As an alternate, Dan would only vote if both a voting member and the senior alternate were not available at the meeting. I'd like to remind everyone, by the way, that in January, it's the responsibility of the Appointments Committee to solicit new members that the LCC committee turns over every January with the term of the RTM. And they are tasked with interviewing and selecting new candidates. To those of you who have expressed concerns about the lack of potential diversity of perspective on the committee, I would encourage you to respond to the call next January. And if you yourself not in a position to do it, let me encourage you to encourage others to do so as well. I want to finish by characterizing Dan as open-minded, collegial, collaborative, and most importantly, he is beholden to no one else on the RTM. He is his own man. He goes where the information takes him. He will do the work we want and need to have him do. So I encourage you to agree with the Appointments and Finance Committees and vote for Dan as an alternate on the LCC. Thank you very much.
All right, so that was 5.5 minutes. Yes?
Even though we didn't pass the 3-minute rule, would it be something you could just let people know that they've hit the 3-minute mark?
I could if, okay.
Can I make a motion to limit the date to 3 minutes per motion?
Yes, that's a different issue. All right. It has been moved and seconded to limit debate for the balance of the meeting to 3 minutes per motion, so that if we did have multiple motions, people could speak multiple times on the same item. Again, that is not debatable and requires a 2/3 majority to pass. And we'll call for a voice vote in the first instance. All those in favor of Kim Blang's motion for a 3-minute limit per motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
That motion is carried. All right. Monica Prohoda, to be followed by Nancy Cooper.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator
Good evening.
and fellow RTM members. I am Monica Prihoda from Old Greenwich.
Speak up.
I am Monica Prihoda from Old Greenwich, District 6. I look forward to working with you together in 2019. The point of having this 230-member representative town meeting with 15 distinct committees representing the town of Greenwich is so that it will be widely representative of the town as a whole. If a small cadre consisting of a handful of people, in this case, leadership from the Finance and Budget Overview Committees, come to dominate committees that are charged with reviewing the town's relations with its personnel, we will lose sight of this body's role in maintaining Greenwich's character as a town with a broadly participatory government. This is not a personal concern about the candidate, but a concern of principle. I urge my fellow members of the RTM, the Appointments Committee, and perhaps the Governance Committee going forward to acknowledge the value of having the Labor Contracts Committee comprised of people who do not already have significant platforms with the RTM to express their views on the town's labor contracts. I also hope that a widely diverse group of people might be encouraged to seek appointment to this committee. I do not believe the purpose of the RTM is solely to cut expenses and taxes. I believe the onus is on each one of us to enhance the quality of life for all of us, including town employees. I believe we want a town that creates an environment where people will want to live and work. Ultimately, it is in the interest of the town of Greenwich to do so. Therefore, I urge the RTM to vote to postpone indefinitely or to join me in my vote of no for this candidate on the basis of principle. Thank you.
Nancy Cooper to be followed by Rachel Khanna.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Cooper from District 5, and I am recommending the vote for Dan. And I'm doing that really based on two considerations. One, we have an appointments committee that spends an inordinate amount of time vetting candidates and ensuring that all the people who volunteer are qualified and ready to serve in the function. And I am concerned that if we have a function that is doing this and then do not take the recommendation, that is a problem. So they've spent a lot of time. There were 3 candidates, and he's deemed as very qualified. Second consideration is actually very personal. I've gotten to know Dan very well over the last couple of years, and I think he's a very analytical, open, caring person. And I think you are picking a skill set for the LCC as an alternate that is extremely important for this town. And Dan, to me, has 3 characteristics which will do a very fine job. The first of which is he is a caring person. He will care that the employees of this town want to work for this town, which is very important. As someone said earlier, this is not, you have to have this as a win-win or it doesn't work, and he totally gets that. The second one is we have to deliver the services for the town, and the contracts we sign need to make sure they deliver the services to the town. And talking with Dan, I am sure he also understands that. And lastly, this function, the LCC, has a major impact on the largest part of the town's costs. You've already heard there's 73%. And someone who totally understands the interrelationship of contracts to the budget, to the mill rate, ensures that we do our responsibility of assuring that Greenwich has an affordable mill rate. And so those reasons are why I think we should support Dan's nomination. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel Khanna to be followed by Brooks Harris.
Mr. Moderator, fellow RTM members, the purpose of the RTM is to represent the
Speak
views
up.
and beliefs of the citizens of Greenwich. With this appointment of the 7 regular and alternate members of the LCC, we have the chair of the VOC, the vice chair of the VOC, an alternate member of the VOC, the chair of the Finance Committee, and a former chair and current member of the Finance Committee. That is 5 of the 7 members of the LCC on the 2 standing committees that also review all proposed labor contracts and give their opinions to the full RTM. When the leadership of the 2 RTM committees, whose primary functions are to oversee the town's budgetary concerns, is given significant power over yet another separate committee, we are doing a disservice to our community and failing to fulfill our responsibilities as elected representatives. What is the point of the LCC if it is a subset of the BOC and Finance Committees? I urge you to vote no on Daniel Ozenfier's nomination to the LCC, not because he is not qualified for the position, but because we don't want the LCC to be an extension of the DOC and Finance Committees, and also because we should leverage the skills of a wider pool of members of
Brooks Harris to be followed by Janet McMahon.
Hello, I'm Brooks Harris from District 10, and I'm here to speak in support of Dan. I'm not really a new member. I've been here for about a year. I wanted to tell a story about when I joined this body. I had no idea how anything worked, and I asked a couple people, and they said, you know, you ought to talk to Dan. He could really help you out. And so I called him, and he called me back immediately, and he met with me, sat down with me for an hour, went through the budget, explained how the RTM worked, and that was great. And he's done that a number of times since then, and he always seems to have the answer. He's very well qualified. I think everybody concedes that Dan is well qualified and he's smart. I like the fact that he has an inquisitive mind. He doesn't just accept what he's told, but he wants to figure out, is that really the case or not? And I think it's really useful having somebody like that, you know, working on our behalf. I also think that it's the case that he's very committed to communicating with people. I mean, I haven't always agreed with Dan on every issue that comes down the pike here, but whether I vote with him or against him, the next time I see him, he's always very anxious to, you know, tell me what I need to know if I have questions. So I just want to reflect that to the body and say, I think we really should approve him. He's very talented. We're very lucky in a volunteer organization to have people of such talent be willing to do this. I think we should reflect that by actually giving him a chance to do this, and I support him strongly. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet McMahon to be followed by Bruce Flug.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm asking you to vote no on this appointment, not because I have anything against Mr. Azizmir. I've actually met him once, and he seems like a lovely person. His resume boasts some very impressive academic credentials, and he's done important work on the RTM over the years, and for that I thank him. I'm asking you to vote no, however, because if you appoint Mr. Azizmir to this committee, there will be an unhealthy dominance of leadership from BOC and Finance that will sit on this committee. Indeed, almost half of the 7-person committee will be comprised of the Chair of Finance, Chair of BOC, and the Vice Chair of BOC. That to me in and of itself is stunning and disturbing. We all know that a lot of the RTM work is done in committee. When leadership within those committees intersect and overlap, not just once, but several times among several committees, a tyranny of thought begins to prevail. There can be no diversity of opinion, only an echo chamber of similar or identical viewpoints. On a committee like LCC, this is not only dangerous, but contrary to the goals of the committee. I'm also asking you to vote no on this appointment because while Mr. Azizmir may have the qualifications for the job, as you've all heard, he was not the only qualified candidate. I believe there was a better candidate that evening, and that favoritism was at play here. Otherwise, why would an employment lawyer with over 40 years of experience, whose practice specifically involves counseling employees on severance packages, be passed over? Why would a seasoned negotiator who has significant experience with employee compensation, benefit negotiations, and contracts, indeed the keystone requirements of the position itself, be unable to win the nomination? Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cantor was that candidate, and this resume he submitted to the Appointments Committee proves that he has the specific work and RTM experience required of the LCC member. His only detriment being that he did not attend the Appointments Committee meeting that evening armed with a cheering squad. I believe that all candidates on all committees should be nominated based solely on merit and not popularity or favoritism. Moreover, committees should be comprised of members who represent a fair and balanced subsection of RTM views and ideologies. I believe that Mr. Cantor was robbed of the Appointment Committee's nomination, and I ask you to vote no on Mr. Azizmir's appointment tonight. Thank you.
Bruce Flug to be followed by Jenny Baird.
Good evening. So I'm Bruce Flug. I'm with District 5. I'm going to say a few words in support of Dan's appointment as the alternate member of the LCC. We've heard some accolades, so I just want to repeat a few of them to bring them to everybody's attention again. So on December the 4th, Dan's nomination was extensively vetted by the Appointments Committee, and the result was 9 votes in favor out of a possible 12. On January the 14th, Dan's nomination was also extensively vetted by the Finance Committee, where the vote was 11-0 to 1. We know that. Dan's been an active member of the RTM since 2012, and again, we've heard a lot about his capabilities and his credibility. He's the vice chair of the VOC, and he's prepared detailed research on analysis and budget items, including labor contracts, so he has a familiarity. Dan contributed analysis of the town's successful arbitration of the Teamster contract, for those that remember that, and Dan also advocated the defined contribution plan at the retirement board. The Silver Shield recently moved from the DB to the DC for new employees, and that was a win-win for the town and for labor. So I believe that Dan has the skills to assist the LCC as they face the many challenges going forward, and I would strongly support Dan's appointment. But I do have some additional comments, because in addition to Dan and his credibility, I think we have another issue here, to be quite honest with you. So I'd like to comment that when considering these important committee appointments, we should continue to make the appointments based on merit, on the individual skills, experience, and background, and their commitment and willingness to do the work. We should have faith and confidence in our respective committees who have vetted the candidates, that the committees have done their job, and that they're objective in that they're putting forward the best candidates. In this example, the appointment committee spent well over an hour hearing from each candidate. They questioned them extensively. They questioned them about their approaches, their experiences, and their ability to be objective and without bias. I believe it's a disservice to the candidates, to the committees, to the town, and frankly to the citizens of Greenwich if we try to challenge the sanctity of that process or try to override it. Thank you.
Jenny Barrett to be followed by Christine Edwards.
I'm also from District 5, and I just want to say, first of all, that Dan is a very nice guy, and he's been very supportive of me since I've joined the RTM, and I think for everybody who's ever talked to him. That said, I am not supporting his candidacy for the LCC for many of the reasons that have already been stated here this evening, so I won't repeat them, but primarily I'm concerned about the preponderance of members of Finance and BOC on this committee that reviews labor contracts, which is already reviewed by Finance and BOC. In the bigger picture, I am concerned about this 230-member body being not representative with, certain people holding multiple positions, which I've heard there aren't enough volunteers, but I'm not sure that's entirely true. And finally, I've heard that there's a good reason to stack the the LCC with finance and budget people, because that's what a good business would do in the corporate world, is to focus on the finances and the budget. But I want to remind you, we are not a corporation, we are a government, and we have to be fiscally responsible and do the right thing, but we also represent the people of this town. Thank you.
Christine Edwards to be followed by Mary Ann Schulte. Mary Alice Schulte.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator and colleagues. Like many people here, I have a very good experience of working with Mr. Osamir, but I was also on the Budget Overview Committee for 12 years, maybe 14 now, I think. And of that, I was secretary for 10 and 2 as a vice chair. Because of that, I've had the experience of being in meeting after meeting where really one of the major things was to cut, and we've seen that with many of the reports from BOC. I want to bring up what Janet Mann said with just one phrase. We have to be very wary of a tyranny of a majority here. And I think that that's what I see if we have both the chair for BOC and the vice chair on this committee, because there's a very targeted view of how Budget Overview has looked at our budgets. And I've been there, and I see that. So my view would be we should protect the integrity of the body here, and for that committee, I would vote no for Mr. Osamir. Thank you.
Mary Alice Schulte to be followed by Alice Duff.
Hi, I'm Mary Alice Schulte from District 12. I'm speaking today not to recommend voting against this candidate, and I am not criticizing this particular appointments committee recommendation. Sorry. Rather, I am concerned about a larger trend that this appointment highlights, and that I hope will be considered by the appointments committee and particularly when the entire LCC committee is appointed in the coming term. My concern is that the LCC is simply becoming an extension of two standing committees and is thereby losing its function as a separate committee with its own purpose and function. With this appointment of the 7 regular and alternate members of the LCC, we have the chair of the BOC, the vice chair of the BOC, an alternate member of the BOC, the chair of the Finance Committee, and a former chair and current member of the Finance Committee. That's 5 out of the 7. All labor contract votes are referred to the BOC, the Finance Committee, and the Labor Contracts Committee. If LCC is dominated by the same people that are sitting on and controlling the BOC and Finance Committees, the whole point of having a separate Labor Contracts Committee to provide its perspective and recommendation apart from the other committees who provide their own perspectives and recommendations is threatened. I ask that when the Appointments Committee next determines the makeup of the LCC as a whole, they consider the need for diversity of representation across a wide cross-section of committees. Thank you.
Alice Duff to be followed by Joanne Swanley.
Alice Duff, District 7. I'm on the Appointments Committee, and I hate to take issue with what's been said, but it was not staged. It was a fair and square election. I was not aware of any cheerleaders, one side or the other. I was aware of 3 very good candidates, and I believe the very best candidate won. One of the things I believe we need to do on the RTM is research and work. And Dan's your man. You can't get anyone better than Dan. Thank you, Dan, for being willing to serve. I'm voting for him.
Joanne Swanley to be followed by Lucy Krasner.
Question. Move for the question.
Moderator, fellow members of the RTM. We've had this debate before. It was the night that we had about 87 votes, as you may recall. It was a long evening, and I'm hoping that the body tonight will come out the same way. The LCC role is an advisory one to the RTM. It's where the committee informs the RTM about labor contracts and reflects the labor negotiator and reflects to the labor negotiator the thinking and feeling of the RTM as a whole. The broader those views and the greater the diversity and the skill sets represented, the better the LCC can perform these essential tasks. We are better off with adding a skilled negotiator, someone with an HR background or an attorney, or a member representing labor. Yes, we have such constituents. Some of them are members of this organization. It's been said, where are those people? They didn't step up. In fact, 2 others did seek this position, and one had labor law experience. And going forward, I hope that all of us will consider running for the LCC. But for now, we must resist adding yet another person with a financial background, and here's why. 1, it will not better this body to hear the same views presented by 3 different committees, but by hearing the same reports coming out of 3 different committees. But more importantly, an issue arises because it's hard for members of the BOC or Finance serving on the LCC to take off their budget and finance hats and vet the labor contract negotiations from the perspective of the LCC. Labor contracts should be vetted with respect to the quality of the negotiating result in light of state labor negotiation and arbitration laws, and what is good for the town overall. The interlocking board development among BOC, Finance, and LCC runs the very real risk of having the goal become achieving a certain budget result, rather than having the approach which vets labor contract negotiations from the pragmatic viewpoint of what is achievable under state labor negotiation and what is best for Greenwich, taking into account a variety of factors in addition to the bottom line. There are not always compatible, and it is essential that the RTM hear from a committee views other than those that we will already hear from Finance and BOC. We will make better decisions if we hear from these lenses in addition to the finance lenses. We are not a rubber stamp for the Appointments Committee. With the appointment of 5 of the 7 regular and alternate members of the LCC, we would have far too heavy representation. In the future, when appointments comes to recommending a full slate next time, I really hope that if they like Mr. Osmeer, maybe another member of Finance comes off. vote no on the appointment. Thank you very much.
Lucy Krasner, to be followed by Sam Tellerico.
Question.
Good evening. I rise to speak against the nomination of Mr. Ozmir. This is not just another nomination to fill a vacancy. Rather, it is an issue of government. I don't think we really want such a very few people controlling all segments of our town finances. Now, we've heard a lot of the things I was going to say before, so I'm going to get a little bit more specific. And let's look at what, in fact, in the past, Budget Overview has wanted to do in regard to the budget. They have wanted to cut back on education. They have wanted to cut back on our fleet. And for many years, many of their suggestions were turned down. We were concerned about services and not just the bottom line. Education, again, is a very important thing, and they wanted to cut back in education. So these are things we really need to look at specifically, in addition to what we've already heard with the fact of these overlapping committees that I think is a very bad idea. And again, the perspectives of different people is very important, and to have these overlapping committees, I think, is very unwise. It's a bad nomination, not because Dan is not intelligent, but because it concentrates power in the hands of very few people. The idea of overlapping committees is unwise, and I urge you to vote against Dan Ozmir for this position.
Mr. Moderator, I move for the question. Second.
Yeah, well, I'm not accepting that. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, potentially 6 speakers remaining. They signed up. That decision not to is appealable, but
I appeal the decision, Mr. Moderator. I don't believe you can not accept a motion that's properly before this body.
well, we've been through this before. It's ultimately the body's decision what to do. I've explained that the tradition in the RTM is to allow people to come to this forum, and that's the beauty and the strength of the RTM, to have discussion and public debate. And so I have always said that I will protect those who go to the trouble of signing up on a list. I announced how many there were before. We do have a limit. But if the body wants to cut off those who have not yet been reached, free to do that. So the ruling of the chair is not to accept the motion of the previous question at this moment, when my intent would be, if that is sustained, to proceed to a vote after all the speakers who had signed up have been given an opportunity. The question to be put on the appeal is, shall the ruling of the chair be sustained? If you are in favor of supporting the ruling of the chair, you vote in favor, yes. If you want to overturn that ruling, you vote no. A majority of no votes is required to prevail on the appeal. Are we clear what we are doing? All right. In the first instance, I'll try for a voice vote. If we need to go to a record vote, we will. All those, so the question is, shall the ruling of the chair be sustained? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, that the ruling of the chair has been sustained. All right, where were we? Sam Tellerico, to be followed by Phyllis Alexander.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, fellow members, and especially our guests in the auditorium.
Would you speak into the microphone?
I certainly will, thank you. Is that better for you?
Yes.
No hearing aids required. While I do not address this body very often, I do feel it important to do so tonight in favor of the candidacy of Daniel Ozmir. As a long-serving member of the Appointments Committee in the past, and currently as an alternate, I can assure you I've seen many, many candidates come through the process, some with outstanding qualifications, some with intermediate qualifications, and a number with intermediate qualifications, but the desire to serve. And that was the rewarding part about being in the Appointments Committee. You all know that this body relies on the conduct of preliminary screening, interviews, learning the candidate's interest in serving with his or her qualifications. It's not always easy to get candidates to serve. So when someone does step forward, the Appointments Committee correlates the candidate's qualifications with the job at hand. In this case, Mr. Ozesmir, both by the Appointments Committee and the Finance Committee, was confirmed in the majority. I found it a little disappointing earlier in one of the commentaries that indicated or inferred that the two committees, Appointments and Finance, both having 12 members, couldn't come to a clear judgment on this candidate or any other candidates. His qualifications are not only outstanding in his financial profession, but also, in my observation, I have known this candidate for some time, in his analytical capabilities when assessing conditions, issues, and people related to certain needs of the town. These qualifications, his other interests and service to our town, more than present him to us as the most desirable candidate for this alternate position. Therefore, I urge you not to postpone this vote tonight, to vote up or down, but contrarily, to disregard the private aberrations of few and approve Mr. Ozesmir tonight for the position of alternate for the Labor Contracts Committee.
Thank you. Phyllis Alexander to be followed by Ed Lopez.
Hi, I'm Phyllis Alexander from District 9, and I think that a lot of people have said what I would have said, so I'm just going to say I'm confused in why it's a problem to have differing points of view and differing people sit on committees. I thought the idea of this body was that we were to represent the town, not to represent a handful of people. So I think it's very important. It's not this specific vote, but it's the precedent that this vote could set for spreading out the wealth of talent and information that we have in the town. And therefore, I'm urging you to vote no. Thank you.
Ed Lopez to be followed by Peggy Heppelman.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator and fellow members of the RTM. I'm here to support Mr. Ozesmir's candidacy for this committee. Mr. Ozesmir's background and work history made a strong impression on me in the Appointments Committee. He impressed me as someone who approaches public service with a keen sense of fairness, integrity, and humility. Mr. Ozesmir is the type of public servant that we are running a bit short on, someone who will listen and ponder both sides of an issue with full respect and visceral empathy and sympathy. And for these reasons, I urge you to support Mr. Ozesmir. Thank you.
Thank you. Peggy Heppelman to be followed by Wilma Nasinovich.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good evening, fellow RTM members. My name is Peggy Heppelman, and I'm an RTM member from District 11. For the past year, I have been an alternate for District 11 to the Budget Overview Committee, and that is where I've gotten to know Dan Ozesmir. I've been impressed with Dan. He's without a doubt very knowledgeable on all aspects of the town's budget, but he's more than that. In addition to being well-informed, he's thoughtful, measured, and respectful. In multiple meetings where the BOC has discussed labor contracts, Dan has started by saying that it's important that our labor offerings be competitive, that we want to be able to attract and keep talented employees who will provide good services for our citizens.
I think it's important for the RTM to keep in mind that there are two stakeholders in labor contract negotiations: town employees and tax-paying citizens. Town employees are represented by their elected union negotiators who negotiate for the employees' interests. Tax-paying citizens are represented by their elected town officials, including the RTM, which communicates with town negotiators through the Labor Contracts Committee and through the RTM as a whole, which votes on the final contract. Given the limited role that the whole RTM, which can only approve or disapprove the final contract, the Labor Contracts Committee has an outsized role in representing taxpayers. Given that labor costs are more than 70% of the town's operating budget, it's critical to have people on the Labor Contracts Committee who can analyze near-term and long-term financial impacts. But it's equally important to have people who recognize that the town is not just negotiating labor costs. It's looking to maintain competitiveness in the labor market and to improve town services. From what I have seen, Dan Azizmir has an eye on all of these interests and will be an excellent RTM representative on labor contracts. I urge you to vote for Dan Azizmir.
Will Minasinovich, to be followed by Josh Brown.
Good evening, all. As member of the Appointments Committee and past vice chair for many years, is that better? As a member of the Appointments Committee and past vice chair of many years, I disagree with the highly irregular position of either postponing indefinitely or defeating Mr. Osmer's nomination. Mr. Osmer was strongly supported by both the Finance and Appointments Committee. In my District 2 meeting, it was the general consensus that one should volunteer rather than complain about those who do so. A chairman can only have a committee of the volunteers you have, and not the volunteers you might want or wish to have. In my view, if Mr. Osmer's is defeated, it will serve as a disincentive for future candidates to volunteer, as well as further politicize the RTM. To use a football analogy, this is a late hit. Late hits are dangerous to the players or organization's head, and defenders who use this tactic should not succeed.
Josh Brown, John Eddy, did you want to say something?
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
All right, so to be followed by John Eddy.
Mr. Moderator, fellow members and guests, Josh Brown from District 8. I just want to let you know these are my comments. These don't represent labor contracts, which I'm the chair of.
Louder.
I'll do what I can. Pardon me? First and foremost, I want to make sure that we're very clear. We are so fortunate to have someone like Dan with us who's willing to serve and put the time and energy and have the skills that really have made a difference in the debate that we're having. You know, that it's not a personal thing at all. This is what many of you came to me when I became chair of labor and leading up to that point, was the concern around concentration by district or by committee of representation on the LCC. So I'm coming in at this from that perspective of how do we improve the diversity of opinion and others' views to be expressed when you have 3 committees reviewing a labor contract to have that diversity. If you have the same members on 2 or 3 of those committees, it, to me, squelches that. So I'm trying to be responsive to what many of you had said about we need greater representation and diversity in the group. That is what my point is. The key of labor contracts is to give guidance to the town negotiators, and very importantly is to inform the RTM. It's not just about the budget. The Labor Contracts Committee take up working matters, issues relating to labor and what people do and how they do it. But the contract is only one piece of the puzzle that comes together to form the budget. The other aspect of the budget is the number of people that you have doing any of those jobs, things that we've been fortunate of is working into contracts language that give flexibility to management to reassign individuals to be able to outsource, if that is what's appropriate, activities of a department. Those are non-direct financial matters. Those are how can a department head run their operation and provide the services to the town. I had provided guidance to the appointments committee and circulated to the district chairs to help them understand the kinds of people, again, with the idea of how do we create a diverse group of individuals. And I want to thank Mr. Eddy, the chair, for giving me that opportunity to speak also to the appointments committee and describe the kinds of people that I think we need on labor contracts to have that diverse and different discussion. It is our goal to have very good employees, people that enjoy coming to work, to pay them fairly, and to manage the budget. It's part of this is the RTM, and I think the contracts element provides a greater avenue to provide a good working environment for our people, for the employees. We've already heard about the amount of budget that's consumed by people and the supporting costs. My concern is the overlap between committees. That's it.
I forgot to give you the 30-second warning.
Thank you, I'm getting to a close. So with that, I'm asking the district chairs to look at, and their members, all of you, to look within your district for other candidates to come forward for Labor Contracts Committee. I'll recirculate my email because there are going to be vacancies opening in labor contracts in the not too distant future. So I had asked you once before, I'm asking you now pointedly. We need more representation. Encourage members in your district to step up and step forward. Thank you, Dan, for all you've done. I very much look forward to working with you in whatever capacity that's going to be as a member of my committee and whatever else we maybe do. I think you're an amazing guy, and I'm going to be fortunate to have you in the RTM.
Thank
I do ask you to vote no on the item for the overlap.
Mr. Eddy, Chair of our Appointments Committee. To be followed by Dan Ozesmir.
Okay, so we've heard the positive points from Mr. Ozesmir, his integrity, his qualifications, his education, the amount of work he puts in. On the other side, we have a very good concern, a real concern, about diversity of opinion on the RTM. So we've taken a look at the candidate, we've taken a step back and look at the overlapping and how much diversity we have. Let's take a step back from there. I'm not going to recommend that you vote one way or another on Mr. Ozesmir. I'm going to be voting for him myself tonight. But if we take a look back, tonight there have been accusations and suggestions of unfairness, of things being rigged, or what were the words used? Tyranny of the majority. And I'd like to point out that all of the committees, the standing committees and the special committees on the standing committees on the RTM are appointed by members of your districts. The appointments committee is appointed by members of your district. If, in fact, the things that were mentioned here tonight are of concern, I recommend that you all go back to your districts and you have a conversation about what it is that you'd like from the appointments committee. Because it's important if the accusations that were made tonight are held by a large number of people here. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Dan Ozesmir.
I was kind of dreading tonight, but it was kind of nice to hear so many people say nice things about me, even if they're voting no. So I don't. I wish my kids, my wife were here, my mom and my dad. But in any case, I just want to kind of go over just. I'm going to try to be very short. One, people talk about. I'm a vice chair of one committee right now. Any power and influence I have has nothing to do with my position. It only has to do with the amount of work I do and my willingness to share that and distribute it. Anyone in this room could have done the BOC budget workshop, attended by the entire BET. Thank you for coming. I hope it's interesting. And a lot of people that come. Everyone that attends decides to come. Any one of you could have done that. Okay, I don't get emails first. I'm a vice chair. My chair never misses a meeting, so it's not like I'm ever chair. So the first thing is whatever power and influence I have is not because of some position I have. It's because of the work I do and my willingness to communicate. And The second thing is number of positions. There's many people in the RTM that are chairs of multiple committees. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't do that or they should do that. That's ultimately a governance question. And when the rules are changed, we should all abide by it. Another thing, people talk about rigged elections. Well, I ran 3 times for the LCC. I think I came third once, second time, I don't know where I came in, I couldn't make it. And the last time, I was very heartened to get 9 out of 12 votes on the first ballot. I think the conversation at the LCC was very fulsome. All the issues that you're hearing tonight were talked about. I responded to those. The other candidates did as well. Another issue is Finance and BOC already look at labor contracts, and that's just the same as LCC looking at it. Well, it is a little different. The LCC is going to be looking at the contracts throughout the process.
No, they're not.
The BOC and the Finance Committee see the end product. It's different. Okay? One of the reasons I want to be on the LCC is I don't want to see a situation where we have to reject a contract and we have to postpone it. I'd like to think that more work can be done throughout the entire process so we get better contracts for everybody. The other issue is, the question about I'm only going to look at things financially. Well, I think all of us in this room, if you're given a job, you take the job, you find out what the job is, and you perform in the job.
30 seconds.
In the BOC, my job is to look at things financially. If I'm on the LCC, I will absolutely be looking at contracts much wider. And one thing I would say is I'm an alternate. I would be an alternate if I'm confirmed. I did hear a lot tonight, and there's a lot of interesting things. Sometimes we just argue and fight about a big issue, but I did hear people on the LCC to not just look at contracts financially. So if I am confirmed, I do pledge I will meet with HR, I will meet with the unions, I will meet with anybody throughout these different communities that wants to meet with me, because in the end of the day, if I take a job, I want to do it well. So again, thank you very much, and either way the vote goes, you'll still be hearing from me. So thank you.
Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards, item number 6, and proceed to poll your delegation. Item 7 comes before us. Peter Bernstein, Chair of our Board of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Item number 7, resolved that the sum of $424,000 be the same and is hereby appropriated from Reserve for Capital and Non-Recurring Fund to account Z680-59830 for costs associated with the Hamilton Avenue School playground field.
Thank you. Will the member please move the adoption of the resolution? Resolution on item 7 has been moved and seconded. Kimberly Blank, Chair of our Education Committee, with that report.
Okay, can you hear me? We heard this item jointly with Finance and Public Works. All 12 districts were represented. It was explained that this field was never finished as part of the Hamilton Avenue renovation, and unused funds were returned to the general fund with the knowledge that the playground field would need to be addressed at a later date. The field is not level and needs better drainage. The current plan would level the field, add proper drainage, relocate a walking path, and add a paved surface for student play. The primary focus of our questions was not on whether or not this is a necessary or valuable project. Instead, questions focused on the reasons for approving this as an interim request rather than as part of the capital plan. I'll give you a brief summary of our Q&A. The first question was, why is this here as an interim? The item was approved as an interim request by the Board of Ed in June and by the BET in July. It's unclear why it wasn't included in the fiscal year 19 capital budget request. Minutes from the July BET meeting quote a member of the Board of Ed stating that it was because they forgot to include it, but this has been disputed by other members. Mr. Bernstein and Mr. Mayo explained that there were multiple errors that led to its not being submitted to the RTM for its meeting in September and October. It was submitted in time for a December meeting, but as it would have been the only item on our call, they agreed to postpone it to January. Second, we asked, well, why do you need the money now rather than as part of the May budget? Mr. Bernstein explains that they wanted to get site work started in late April or May to allow for the grass to be planted in late summer. this happened, students could use the field for spring of 2020. If the money is approved as part of the regular budget, work couldn't begin until July 1st. They would miss the growing season for the grass, and students couldn't use the field until the fall of 2020. Third, we asked, is the amount that you've requested sufficient? The letter with the cost estimate of $424,000 states that costs could increase 3 to 5% after 2018. Mr. Bernstein said he felt confident that they could do the work for the amount requested and would come to the RTM if more money was needed. Fourth, we asked questions about the implications of paying for this out of reserve funds rather than bonding. Members of the BET, Jill Overlander, Leslie Moriarty, and Mike Mason were there, and they said they were comfortable paying for this out of the reserve fund, but could always adjust future bonding resolutions to include this amount if they deemed it necessary. Ms. Moriarty pointed out they have been looking at their excess fund balance and that this is one way to bring it down. Finally, we asked, are the appropriate approvals in place? We asked that town officials be consulted prior to this evening's meeting to understand whether MI is required. In subsequent emails, we learned that MI is not required, but they will need to go through a site plan process with the P&Z, which is in progress. After a full discussion, the Education Committee passed this item 1200. In our discussion, several people expressed their frustration with seeing this as an interim appropriation rather than as part of last year's budget, and especially with receiving it in January rather than September. We voiced our concerns over the Board of Ed staff turnover and poor processes that led to these oversights. In voting for this, many cited safety and equity concerns over prolonging the use of an uneven field rather than starting the work as soon as possible. Some also said that they felt comfortable voting for this as an interim appropriation after hearing that the BET was unconcerned about paying for this out of the reserve fund and still had the option to adjust its borrowing to incorporate it for the future. Ultimately, despite concerns about the process, people viewed it as a worthwhile project and did not want to see the students suffer for an extra season on an inadequate field because of sloppiness in the Board of Ed.
Thank you. Mike Basham with the report of our Finance Committee.
As Kimberly said, we met jointly with Public Works and Education on this issue, and I will not repeat everything she said. When we, Finance Committee, retired to address the issue, we looked at it from a couple of different ways. We first felt that, you may have heard Rob Borelli Minetti say more than one occasion, that quite often the DOE it gives the appearance of the left hand doesn't quite know what the right hand is doing, and I know Rob, this is a very important issue from Rob's perspective. We decided to ask for a postponement, an indefinite postponement of the issue. The motion was made and seconded and passed 11-1, District 3 voting no, as they should have. Our concern at the time was the lack of an MI. I think subsequent to that, now we found that an MI is not necessary. But what we have learned is that there are soil testing issues involved that may or may not be completed by the end of February, and to the extent that they are done, will they be done in time for the March call? If they're not done by then, it gets deferred until April, and we're back into the normal capital budgeting cycle for the most part. So anyway, we've addressed the issue again tonight based upon the new information. We again voted, I believe it was 10-1 to postpone and recommend postponing indefinitely. Secondly, we voted unanimously to endorse the rehabilitation of the field, but we encourage the RTM to make sure that it goes through the normal budget process. When you think about it, I heard that they wanted to start July 1, and then I heard from, I think we heard from both Peter and from Ralph, that June 1 was the target date. That's great. I think in between, there's still plenty of time for the RFP process, for whatever they need to go through to make sure that they can start effectively June 1 after the appropriations have been approved by the RTM. So anyway, having said that, we endorse the repairing the field. I think we would prefer to see it go through the normal budget process. On the actual motion itself, we voted 4 in favor and 8 against for the reasons that I just alluded to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carol Zarelli, could I see you for a moment, please? District 9. Michael Spila, Vice Chair of our Public Works Committee.
Your Public Works Works Committee met and discussed item 7 before the joint committee meeting, and again afterwards. At our meeting, this is Mr. Mayo. Both at our meeting and at the joint meeting, we were assured that the costs provided would not go up. The costs presented were accurate. The timeline provided was realistic, and all necessary approvals were in place. Once we, you heard the report of the joint meeting. I won't repeat that. But once we separated and voted on our own, we had voted to take up a sensitive meeting resolution to recommend that the item be moved to the budget in the event the item itself failed. We voted 8-2-0 in favor of the SOMR. However, the moderator has ruled that the language that we came up with wasn't in order, so I won't be presenting that. We'll be hearing the Finance Committee motion instead. We then took a vote on the item as it appears on the call. Our vote on the item was 8-3-0. However, it was very clear in our discussions that our vote was based on a timeline which was provided by the Board of Ed, the assurance that approvals were in place, and a very strong assurance regarding the cost of the project for Mr. Mayo. All of these issues are now very much in doubt. The pricing provided did not include needed soil testing. The approvals were not in place, and the timeline presented seems very questionable. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, before continuing with item 7, I do just want to correct an earlier vote. It doesn't change anything. I announced the vote on the Tuthill motion to limit debate, 102-61-6 abstentions. In fact, there's only one abstention. There were 5 people absent who were marked as abstaining on that card. We disregard abstentions anyway, so no change at all on that. But 102-61-1 on that Tuthill motion. All right, Mr. Basham, did you have a motion to offer on behalf of the Finance Committee?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, we voted, as I said earlier, 11-1 to recommend that we postpone this indefinitely.
All right, that being offered on behalf of one of our committees, it does not require a second and is currently before us. The motion to postpone indefinitely, if adopted, requires a majority vote, has the effect of killing the item. When we call for the vote, it has the effect of those who are opposed to approving this voting in favor of the motion to postpone indefinitely, and those in favor voting against. So it kind of flips the yes and no's. We will now have discussion on the motion to postpone indefinitely, which, as I said, if adopted, has the effect of killing the item. All right, so we did have speaker lists out, and I will treat all those who signed up as wanting to speak on this. We will begin with Sylvester Pecora, to be followed by Ed Lopez. And I remind our speakers that there is a 3-minute limit in effect.
Mr. Moderator, Mr. Tessie, Selectmen, RTM members and guests. In 2005, I was asked by Larry Lever, Superintendent, to represent the community of Chickahominy to be a member of the building committee of the Hamilton Avenue School. That was 10 superintendents ago. When the building was completed, I asked about the field and was told by the chairman, Frank Mazza, that we had to wait for the lawsuit to be settled. We went on the field with a level, which looks like a telescope, to check the rise in the field. We found it to be 6 feet difference from the second baseline to the garage. Before they put up the garage, the field had a 1-foot rise in it. Before they put up the garage, they needed to take 20 feet of our field. 20 feet of the smallest field in town they took of the playground. And the elevation of the garage plus the 20 feet that they took created the field to have the 1-foot rise grow to 6-foot rise. We waited, and 8 years later, the lawsuit was settled. 2016, again, I asked, knowing that there was extra money available from the lawsuit, and I met with Chief Operations Officer Ben Branyan and explained the problem. Since that, after that, he left. Then I spoke to his replacement, Jim Ritchie, and Director of Facilities, Dan Watson, who's there. And then Jim was replaced by Lorraine O'Donnell, whom we, Tom Cornelius and I, our District 3 Chair, and I met with Superintendent Jill Gilday, who was at the meeting, with Dan Watson, and that was our first encounter with a true professional, Lorraine, because she was taking notes, passed them to us later in the week, and that is when movement started after 8 superintendents. We do not blame the Board of Ed, nor do we blame the critics who say it's process, or those who criticize the plan that engineers put together. The children are what counts here and nothing else. We do not need this to be in the budget. We need it to be an interim appropriation to get
30
this
seconds.
project started. Our children are crying to have the same level playing field as every other child in Greenwich. We from Hamilton Avenue do not want to hear from people saying we agree that the children of Ham Ave deserve the level playing field, but then they say, but. Let's forget the but tonight, because we need the approval tonight, and let's get this project started for the children's sake. Let's make it 100% yes for the children of Hamilton Avenue School. Thank you.
I'd ask if we hold all applause. We have quite a number of speakers. Ed Lopez to be followed by Lucy Von Brackle.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm here to support this appropriation for the Hamilton School Avenue field. My impression is that kicking the can down the road is only going to make this finished project more expensive. We've talked about issues of liability, how extending this is going to prolong liability further. And this is part of an unfinished renovation project. At least $140,000 were returned to the general fund at one point. It's time to finish the project before it becomes a more costly project. The Board of Education has approved this appropriation in June of 2018, and we often hear of how little the RTM can do. By not voting for this, which was approved back then in order to correct a human error, when we have an opportunity to do something about it, to me, I feel like that would be dereliction of duty, and means we will re-engage this dialogue unnecessarily in future RTM meetings. I urge you to support this appropriation, and thank you for your time. Thanks.
All right. Hang on just one moment, please. I want to announce the vote on item 6, the appointment of Dan Osismere. Those in favor, 99, opposed, 62, abstaining, 6. That item is carried. Continuing with item 7, Lucy Von Brackle to be followed by Dawn Fortunato.
Hello again. Okay. Our system of checks and balances in this town is imperfect and complicated. It doesn't take much for something to fall through the cracks. In these instances, a well-meaning government can easily fail to provide for the community it serves. Hamilton Avenue School fell through one of those cracks in the early 2010s, and because of a series of mishaps and a lack of oversight, has yet to be offered a fix that hasn't itself contributed to further mistakes and delays. This appropriation is before us to address a very simple need. Elementary school children need a safe outdoor space for recreation and physical education. This is especially important in a community where backyards are often less than 1/10 of an acre. But sadly, addressing this need has been bungled in so many ways it is useless to explain. Some have suggested that pushing the funding approval for this project into May to adhere to a formal appropriations process will not cause additional delays. But the reasons put forth for delaying the appropriation rest on the assumption that once the money is appropriated, the execution of the project will happen on schedule and according to plan. While Greenwich is seeing some improvement in the timely execution of capital projects, I'd hazard to say we cannot rely on that just yet. If we vote no on this appropriation tonight, the earliest the field could be in use is the fall of 2020. If there are delays, it could be pushed off as long as a year beyond that.
An interim appropriation approved tonight could, if the stars align, allow the field to be in use as early as spring of 2020. At the very least, it provides a cushion of a few months' time to accommodate any unforeseen delays. Also, what a no vote says to the Hamilton Avenue community is that process is more important than people, more important than the health and safety of our children. This debacle is not even remotely the fault of the HAMAV community, and they do not deserve to incur any more collateral damage resulting from power struggles between the BOE, BET, and RTM, and whomever else. The HAMAV field has been in a state of emergency for over 10 years. The time to resolve this horrible comedy of errors is right now. Greenwich would be better served if our attention and efforts were put instead toward resolving the issues that got us to this point. Adding insult to injury by putting another obstacle in place for this project when our neighbors are lacking something we in other neighborhoods take for granted is wrong. I hope you will join me in voting yes on this appropriation. Thank you.
Dawn Fortunato, to be followed by Sarah Evans.
Mr. Moderator, I have a letter from our district chair to read. Would you like me to start with that first before I begin? What I would like to say?
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to read a, good evening, Mr. Moderator and fellow members of the RTM. I'm going to read a letter from a student at Hamilton Avenue School. It says, to whom it may concern, I am a student at Hamilton Avenue School. My name is, I'm going to leave her name out. I need you to fix the field. Have you ever visited our field? I think not. I say this because if you had, you would have decided to fix it now instead of waiting another year. Since our school was rebuilt in 2009, our field has been waiting to get fixed, and it has been 8 years, which is now going on 11. It still needs fixing. We students have slipped and fallen many times during our recess because all of the manholes and puddles in our field. We have seen trucks make our field worse because they have driven on our field, and one time during recess, a truck almost hurt one of us. The truck made prints on the field almost the same size as an elephant's prints. When it rains, it becomes filled with big puddles. There are also areas where there is no grass. There are also tree roots that are above ground and lots of rocks. The field needs a guard to see dogs pooping in our field, but the manholes ruin the field. If the field is tilted, there will be no grass, but there are a lot of rocks and sticks. But the basketball field is all torn up. Some kids fall because it's a mess. Sincerely, and that was the child's letter. Our district chair, who couldn't be with us tonight, asked me to read this to you. He's had 8 children graduate Hamilton Avenue, and his granddaughter will be attending preschool there next year. Since the new Hamilton Avenue school was rebuilt, we've been trying to get the drainage issues and slope of the fields fixed. Every time there was a new superintendent that knew nothing of the Hamilton Avenue field when they started, by the time they got up to speed, they were gone. This process has happened at least 5 times. The field was put on hold over and over again. Our kids have suffered now for 10 years playing on a field that is muddy all the time and slopes so much that one team playing soccer or kickball always wins when the other team is on the high side of the field. Recess and gym class should be a fun and most of all, safe environment. After all, would you want your kids or grandchildren facing these dangers when on the field? Please do not let the BOC motion or those who are trying to make an example of the Board of Ed and embarrass them succeed and make our kids face these dangers. In the future,
30 seconds.
I urge you to do the right, or in the future, I urge you to do the right thing for the kids and pass this appropriation and vote yes for the money. It's been too long. Thank you very much for your time and consideration, and vote Tom Cornelius. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Evans, to be followed by Aaron Leonard.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Evans, and I'm the parent of a kindergartner at Hamilton Avenue School. My family moved to Greenwich about 4 years ago, and we've been so impressed by this welcoming school and community. The staff and teachers and facility are wonderful. The field where the children play is not. I understand the issue of the field and its remediation has been ongoing since long before my family and I came to town. I
I submit that it's time to fix that. Our kids deserve a safe place to play and be active, a space that we can all be proud of, and that can serve as a hub for the neighborhood events and community building. I ask that the members of this body vote in favor of the recommendation. Thank you.
All right. Aaron Leonard to be followed by Monica Prohoda.
Aaron Leonard, District 12. This appropriation is lost. It is not in last year's budget. It is not in next year's budget. It is not where it belongs. It belongs in the Board of Education's budget. That is what we are voting on here. And I ask you if you are to vote in favor of this when the Public Works comes before us and says, here's something we forgot that should have been in the previous budget. How will you tell them no? When the library comes and says, here's something that got overlooked, it's been years, we're presenting it to you outside the normal budget, how will you tell them no? What makes this difference? And do not tell me it's for the children. By definition, anything and everything in the Board of Education is for the children. That is the Board of Education, after all. This is not about playgrounds. This is not about children. I feel comfortable saying that everyone here is in support of that, but it needs to be in the proper place, and that is within the budget. I have yet to hear a single good reason that this interim appropriation should be made as opposed to being where it belongs in the budget. Thank you.
All right. Monica Prohoda to be followed by Dave DeAndrea.
Hi again. My message is simple and short. From everything I've heard, the Hamilton Avenue students, the children, and the community deserve to have this approved. It's not a matter of process, and therefore I full-heartedly support our first selectman, Peter Tessie, and Sandy Whitback, and Mr. Toner in approving this for the school.
Dave DeAndrea to be followed by Kimberly Fiorello. Is Mr. DeAndrea here? All right. Kimberly Fiorello to be followed by Suzanne Bryant, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Kimberly Fiorello from District 7. It is understandable how District 3 feels to have this project waiting for 10 years, to feel overlooked and neglected by the Board of Ed and maybe the town. I think they are functioning under a system that is dysfunctional, and I understand that they want to get the funds, whatever funds, however imperfect the interim is. However, I also see that we are all functioning under a system that is not necessarily working well for our kids. And we've seen the photos outside of Ham Avenue, and I think there are probably similar photos from other school buildings in our school district. And this system that is failing our community is creating such a sense of distrust. And there are real consequences when projects are not done with the right processes in order. And we've seen how it disrupts our students' classroom time and disrupts the teachers' concentration. And we've had that happen at multiple buildings this year. I feel that, but it's not hopeless, because we are the RTM. And when we see something not going well in our community, it's our job to say something and do what we can to fix it. Otherwise, we're part of the problem. And I feel that though it is tempting to do what feels good, I would like to do what is hard and do what's right for all the students in our community. I would like to vote to abstain to reinstate the integrity of the budget process, to reinstate the proper processes that really protect our students from the harm that is done when we do things haphazardly and we're not paying attention to details. Thank you very much.
Suzanne Bryant to be followed by Jen Freemier.
Good evening. My name is Suzanne Broadbent, and I'm a lifelong resident of Greenwich. While my daughter was only at Hamilton Avenue for a couple of years, we are part of that family, and that's why I'm here tonight. Updated and safe facilities are a bare minimum expectation for students, faculties, and families in town. People move here for that very reason. We are not meeting that expectation with the state of the Hamilton Avenue field and the amount of time it has taken to address this issue. During our time at Hamilton Avenue, attending PTA meetings, speaking with other parents and members of the community, it became evident that this issue occupied a lot of time and energy and detracted from other initiatives. I won't say anything here that hasn't already been said over many years, but the safety issues alone should be enough to concern even the most slightly risk-averse people in our town. What exactly must happen for something to change? The longer we wait for these improvements, the more it's going to cost, and not just in taxpayer money. It seems the bottom line has been driving these decisions for some time. We cannot put a price on the time and energy of parents, faculty, educators, students, everyone in this room, and more. The list goes on. I only have a few minutes. We've been circling around this issue for too long. Can you imagine what else could be achieved with the time we've spent talking about this? It's time to make the right decision for Hamilton Avenue and support the appropriation. Thank you.
Jen Freimier to be followed by Dean Goss.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jen Frimmer, and I'm a proud parent at the Hamilton Avenue School. I have 2 boys at the school, a 2nd grader and a kindergartner, and I urge you tonight to make the hard decision. And I know it's a hard decision, to right wrongs that have been done before, to help fix just oversights in the past, slight mistakes, but now is the night to vote in favor of funding the Hamilton Avenue School field, to give our students a safe place to play, a place they can be proud of, a place that will help build our community. Not only our children use it during school hours, but we think with this field being fixed, we could build our community in the Hamilton Avenue School District, because we could actually have Little League games there. We might maybe be able to even have a level enough field to have soccer games, a place where we can take our kids if they're excited to play on, not only during the school day, but in the evening and on weekends or during the summer. So I really would appreciate you making the difficult decision tonight to vote in favor of funding our field, to take that step forward with the Hamilton Avenue School community. Thank you.
Thank you. Dean Goss to be followed by Dean Gamanos.
There's another Dean Goss there, maybe my father. No. Anyway, I think everyone here is committed to funding this request for item number 7. But asking for an interim appropriation will likely, from what I can tell, not speed up the timeline to actually restoring the field in question, the playing area. In other words, I think a lot of people think that if we simply approve it, bang, we're off to the races, so to speak. I have a note here, timeline A, and that's if we get this money and approve it tonight for item 7. This is going to have to go in front of the Planning and Zoning Committee, and even though apparently steps have been taken to initiate that process, you're probably looking at 4 to 6 weeks from today to hear back from them. So let's just say it's 6 weeks, okay? Then the odds are the Planning and Zoning Committee will have some comments, modifications, suggestions to the plan, and then these comments will need to be incorporated into the design before it is put out for bid. So let's just add another week, at least maybe 2, outside 3 more weeks to the timeline. So now the project can be put out to bid, but that's probably another 4 weeks or so process. And then any winning bidder probably won't be able to start right away. It'll probably take them, say, 4 weeks to get ready to do this project. So now we're bumping up against the end of the school year. And once you're kind of that close, it'll probably be tempting to just say, let's wait till the end of June or July 1st, and then
get going on this project. Money. What is being requested here is probably not quite enough because some time has passed since this plan was put together. And a real bad situation would be if the supporters of item 7 want to come back to the RTM for more money later on an interim request next fiscal year for any shortfall. But wait, I've heard firsthand, and it is firsthand, but I've heard that there have been some assurances from the DOE that they won't actually make that request.
30 seconds.
Okay, but that's not what we want here tonight either. We don't want to shortchange the Hamilton Avenue community. We just want our process respected. Since I just have a few minutes, what I would suggest is if we simply put this into the budget right away, we'll be talking about it May 13th. If we approve it, and during the interim, they got the planning and zoning okays and all the other okays, we're still looking at a July 1st start date, and the odds are we'll put more money into it for, say, sod and some other things. And so it just seems like everyone would be better off if we simply voted to either reject this or to postpone, and the BOE immediately put it in the budget. So we'll be talking about it May 13th, and that way we'll all be
Thank you.
vetting it in the meantime. Anyway, that's how I see it. Thank you. But I'm definitely for the money.
Dean Gamanos to be followed by Michael Bruscia.
Mr. Moderator, thank you. Fellow members, this is not a big park, but I know it's a very important one to the people who live in the neighborhood. It seems to have been under my radar, so I rode over there the other day and took a look at it. And yes, it does need work, and this is not an easy decision for anybody. I spoke to people who live in the neighborhood, and not only do kids use it to play ball in, and seniors like to walk around it. It's a green space that's very important for the residents of Chickahominy. Byron Park's, Shore Park is a little far, as are the parks on the other end of town. But I think if we keep the process moving forward, we should do it the right way, but make sure that we stay on top of it. I'm a little concerned seeing all those manhole covers, and I inquired as to why there were so many. Apparently, there is some kind of thermal engineering stuff going on underneath the field that has to do with the school. And I don't think that's a simple process that can just be soil shifted around. I think it's got to be done carefully. And if we waited 10 years for this, maybe doing it right and adding a few months is worth it. So I would say let's do it correctly through the process. Thank you.
Michael Bruscia to be followed by Allison Walsh.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator and fellow RTN members. I'm Mike Bruscia from District 9. Regarding item 7, I would like to see the job done right and done once. The interim will not speed up the process. I believe a vote postponed will actually benefit the kids and the coaches who coach those kids. I'm one of those coaches. I use Sam Avenue School for first and second graders. Those fields are playable. A month from now, I'll be doing t-ball. In the fall, it's flag football. Let's get it right. What's that mean? Proper accountability. No project delays. On budget. Let's work to make that the best field in town for the kids and the coaches. Thank you.
Allison Walsh to be followed by Yaneli Avila.
Hello. Many of us here don't remember the long and painful process that was the renovation of Hamilton Avenue School, which resulted in a generation of children from kindergarten through 6th grade, 5th grade, spending their entire elementary careers in trailers. So that's what happened before 10 years ago when the school renovation was finally completed. Members of my district, Sulpicora, Cornelius, others who are much more long-standing than I am, have fought assiduously to advocate to have the school field completed. It is literally not a level playing field, and a level playing field is a metaphor for a reason. If a child kicks a soccer ball up the hill, it rolls right back at her. There are plenty of people who say we should put this off and it's not an emergency, but if it were in North Street or Old Greenwich or Riverside, I don't think this school would have had an unlevel playing field for quite so long. And so everybody says we can push it off and we can push it off and we can push it off. And I will say this, we expect Board of Education to do this right, to do this within the contract amount that they're saying that they can do it. And the fact that we need a soil permit means that we need to move this forward now. In order to get this field online for these kids who've been needing it and playing with manhole covers jutting above grade for a very long time. We need to move this forward now. It is urgent, it is important, it's a potential liability, and it's just wrong that it's taken so long and so much effort just to get really the school project completed. It's not a park. It's not, it may be a useful community space at some point, but it's not a park, it's a part of a school that was never completed. And we do expect the Board of Education to do it for us on time. The fact that there's soil permitting needed means that it doesn't cut in the direction of postponing this till next year. The BET has assured us that nothing is assured about this being included in next year's budget. The POE has said that it may not be included in next year's budget because it's in this past year's budget. Somebody dropped the ball. The kids at Hamilton Avenue did not drop the ball. So I think that all of these factors and the fact that we need soil permitting and mean that we need to move this forward now so that we have a chance of these children playing on it sometime in the 2019-2020 school year. And, you know, I would respectfully say that the people who urge us to respect our process
30 seconds.
don't have kids using those ball fields. And we have to think about what's more important, process, window dressing, or substance. Thank you.
Yaneli Avila, to be followed by Judd Cohen.
Good evening. My name is Yaneli Avila, and I'm a very proud parent of 3 students at Hamilton Avenue, one in preschool, one in first grade, and one in 5th grade. Unfortunately, my 5th grader will not be able to reap all the positives of having a field that is safe for him to use. And while I echo the concerns of many of the parents that have come up here to speak, I actually would like to share a letter that was written by a Hamilton Avenue student. To whom am I concerned? I think the field at Hamilton Avenue School is not as good as other fields at Greenwich schools. Hamilton Avenue School needs a better field. When the construction company came to build the new school, they drove their trucks all over our field, making it uneven and creating holes. The soil is so bad that when it rains, it takes more than a week to dry. My first reason is that on the field, it's muddy and wet. My second reason is it is unsafe for kids to be playing on it. My last reason is trucks drive all over our field. Hamilton Avenue School needs a better field because the field is so muddy and wet. This was caused by when the construction company drove their truck on the field, which made the soil rocky and bumpy. Just yesterday, a truck was driving on our field and almost ran over 4 kids. When we play soccer a day or two after it rains, it is wet all over the field. We might trip and get wet. We can't change until we get home, and by the time we change, we might be sick. There is a huge hole near the parking lot that is filled with water and looks like a pond. The field is unsafe for kids to be playing on it. It is hard to play kickball because on the side of the field, it is muddy. If you put your foot into the dirt, you sink. The field is not even. This can cause kids to trip and get hurt. On the sidewalk, there is a tree and roots are making cracks, and some parts of the sidewalk are higher than others. This can cause big injuries. My last reason is trucks are always on our field, making less space to play at recess. One time, a truck came to add wood chips on the playground. When they left, we had to stop whatever we were doing so they could pass by. They even left wood chips all over the field. I think all schools should have a safe field to play on. Hamilton Avenue School needs a better field. I wonder if the people who are in charge of this don't care because their kids don't come to this school. As a student at Hamilton Avenue, I feel like you don't care about our school. Why do we have to suffer for something that we did not even cause? We can use the money you received when you sued the construction company to get the field fixed. What if in 2018 you change your mind and then say you're going to fix the field in 2019? This was a year ago, so that child's fears came to fruition. So I beg that you vote to keep this on the budget.
Thank you. Judd Cohen, to be followed by Costa Michaelides, maybe?
Mr. Moderator, in the interest of time, I'm just going to read excerpts from a letter from a 5th grade girl at Hamilton Avenue. Our field hasn't been getting the best, and we kids haven't gotten the best either. The space that we played kickball in is destroyed. The place where we pitch is all sunken in, and when it's hot, all the sand turns into sticky mud. This ruins our shoes, and if we fall, ruins our clothes. It is also harder to run in it too. There are lots of rocks. I have tripped tons of times on rocks, even when I'm watching where I'm going. There is barely any grass on the ground, and the soil is absolutely gross and disgusting. You know, I hope tomorrow we don't have to tell this girl that government doesn't care about her and her friends. Thank you.
Costa Michaelides, to be followed by Lucia Jansen.
Good evening. I'm going to read my prepared remarks and then I have a response to some of the things that were said. I'm a Hamilton Avenue parent. That's the perspective I'm bringing here. I actually brought my kids with me. They're here. We play on the field. I have 2 children in Hamilton. One is in 5th grade, one is in 2nd grade. I'm speaking in favor of the interim appropriation to fund the project. I have 2 children currently in Hamilton, 5th and 2nd grade. Also, I've been to a few of these. This is the first time I'm speaking. My wife and I moved to Greenwich to raise our children here. We moved 5 years ago. We're very happy with our decision overall. The location we chose was perfect for our needs. It included Hamilton Avenue School. As a result of our choice, we have been beneficiaries of a fantastic crew of exceptional educators. Hamilton Avenue staff and educators are awesome. My children have been growing, learning, and maturing in a fantastic environment under the guidance of caring, involved, and talented educators. Both my children score very well on standardized testing. We're very thankful. My younger son started Ham in preschool, and the effects of the caring, nurturing, and involved staff are evident. Special mention must go to our principal, Mr. Grasso. Mr. Grasso is an educator of the highest caliber. Mr. Grasso is very involved, very skilled, very caring principal, tremendous character, intuition, and empathy. He's a treasure and an immense and possibly unappreciated asset to the GPS. I believe he intends to go back into retirement next year. We will miss him. My wife and I love having our children go to a neighborhood school. We are always nearby. The neighborhood is familiar, and so are the children in the neighborhood that they go to school with. The field they play on after school is the same field they play during school, and there's the problem. We've been to other fields in town. We know and recognize just how bad the field is at Hamilton. So do our kids. Doesn't encourage our kids to go out and get their exercise when the field is always muddy, unlevel, unattractive, and overall decrepit. I play with my kids on the Ham Ave field. I like to kick a soccer ball around with them. I can verify it's pretty bad. I hear stories about how it wasn't always like this, how it used to be one of the better baseball fields, how it all happened after the school was renovated about 10 years ago. From an administrative point of view, let me make one point. Greenwich suffers from a failure to generate interest in the magnet part of magnet schools. Parents do not tend to choose to send their kids outside of their neighborhoods to magnet into other district schools. Insofar as Hamilton is concerned, I can understand why. It suffers from a lack of identity, a clear differentiator that encourages students to magnet in. Personally, I think that the quality and caliber of our educators, and our principal in particular, should be enough. But honestly, if I were visiting Hamilton and had the option of another elementary school in the district, I would not go inside. I'd take one look at the fields and leave it at that. My wife and I like HAMAB, we like the education our children receive, we like the great student-to-educator ratio. We find it convenient and appealing to have our kids in a school near our house. HAMAB has a lot going for it. One thing it does not have is a decent field. My kids are patient enough to sit through this meeting in hopes of seeing something happen. And we were here last session too, and there was the gas situation as well. We think it's high time that this was addressed and the HAMAB parents stopped getting strung along with promises that actually never seem to materialize. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. Please approve an interim appropriation. With that, if I have a few moments, I would just like to address a couple of things that were said. I did hear from amongst the first speakers that the money is available and that it wouldn't be a problem to make the interim appropriation. People keep saying process, process, process. All I hear is delay, delay, delay. If the money is available, what is the issue with getting this done? Also, the interim appropriation was someone stated it here, that the interim appropriation will speed things up. I play on this field, and if there's an issue with the soil, then I'm being exposed to this every day. So are my children. If the soil is such a big issue, I think that we should want to get this started as soon as possible, not take forever to get it done. I also heard that it wasn't in the budget and that we should make it part of the proper budget and all that. But we were told that earlier that it wouldn't be a problem to get the money from and the intern from. Okay. We were told that the money would be available and that it wasn't a problem to do it as a interim appropriation. Thank you very much for this time to speak, and I do hope that you will vote in favor of the interim appropriation.
Thank you. Thank you for your indulgence. Lucia Jansen to be followed by Peter Tessie.
Good evening. Tonight I am speaking as an RTM member and not in my role as a BOC chair. I want to begin first by thanking our interim superintendent, Ralph Mayo, for his indefatigable energy in the last 6 months. He hit the ground running during a very difficult period with numerous school maintenance issues. So thank you, Mr. Mayo. Now to the item. Like all of you, all the parents, the teachers, everyone who've been advocating for this field for the last 8 years, I support the merits and the scope of this project. The school and the neighborhood have indeed waited over 8 years for a level playing field, and it is indeed long overdue. However, like with the Finance Committee and the Public Works Committee reports, I believe this project should be in the capital project budget process. This recommendation is not sent as a message to the Board of Ed or a process issue. It's about the validity of having this item as an interim appropriation. I could really use some water, I don't have. When this project, the way that it's developed today, it will not affect the timing. Oh, Tom has been here when this has happened. Thank you, Mr. Seth. Thank you. Thank you. The project is not delayed with this going into the capital budget. We have learned since the RTM meetings that there is a P&Z soil permit needed. That permit requirement started already to be responded to by the Board of Ed in August 2018. The Board of Ed is able to go through the design requirements with the P&Z, create a scope document, go out to bid, have a walkthrough with the contractors, do everything but sign the contract. That's a lot of legwork. But a couple hours ago, I learned of something new that's required. And Mr. Moderator, through you, I would like the chairman of the Board of Ed, who is the sole representative, to respond to the new information about environmental soil testing. At the Board of Ed meeting, it was specifically asked by a Board of Ed member, is environmental soil testing required for this project?
30 seconds.
It was responded to as no. The BET, during their approval, asked, is environmental soil testing required? The answer was no. So my question is, can you please explain the environmental soil testing that will be done and what will be the impact to the timeline?
Thank you. Mr. Bernstein, I did recognize Mr. Tessie, but you have no obligation to speak. I will offer you an opportunity if you...
Can I come at the end?
Sure, yes.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. Peter Tessie, our first selectman.
Certainly willing to yield my time to another Peter. I rise tonight to support moving ahead with the project based upon the fact that I believe everyone here in attendance agrees that it's a deficiency that's been existing for quite some time, frankly, since the building was rebuilt on that site and the site was altered to accommodate a geothermal heating and cooling system. I think we also all can agree that this interim appropriation and efforts to resolve this issue has become a victim of the revolving door of administrative heads at Havemeyer. It's also an identifiable liability risk for the town. And one thing that we all share here is that we all play a part in assessing and managing risks and having to settle incidents when they occur. You do so through your claims committee, the Board of Selectmen does it as a whole, as does the full BET. It is an identifiable risk, and I think we all would like to see it mitigated. Advancing this now, in my humble opinion, gives us a head start in doing that. And if there are any issues as a result of what we just heard tonight, and I look forward to hearing from Chairman Bernstein, it puts it foursquare out there so that we can grapple with it.
Thank you. Peter Bernstein, Chair of our Board of Education.
Thank you. Apologies first if I'm not coherent. I'm suffering from a sinus infection. I do want to let you all know Mr. Mayo would love to be with you tonight, but he's on an airplane back from his daughter's wedding, so he'd rather be there. He was here last week, though. We were ready. So my boys actually started at the Hamilton Avenue School. I spent more time on that field in their early years, but I have been on every field of every school in this town, and there is no field like it. While some of the conditions are not perfect at some of our fields, drainage, grass growing, and the like, there is no field that is like this field. So let's be clear on what that is. There are approvals ongoing. It is not to the P&Z Commission, it is the staff, it is Katie DeLuca. We've been working with Katie DeLuca. We have been talking with her. These are processes that can be concurrent. These are not separate processes. So we can move forward with the interim, we can move forward with an RFP. We can actually get to the point where we are ready to roll. That is the timeline that we are hoping for. Any delay, and I mean any delay, pushes us even further back. You're not talking about the end of a school year, you're carrying over into another school year. And we want to minimize the impact of that. What we know from some of the studies of the outside firm is even when the budget becomes available on July 1, that doesn't mean that everything really is able to start on July 1. Budget codes aren't available July 1. Things are not loaded in the system. This is a time-length process. Legal approval and everything else, everybody in this town trying to move a project forward is relying on the same group of people to do that. From the time the BET and the RTM pass their budgets until July 1, there's a steady stream of this. We're trying to get ahead of that. The interim will actually keep this moving. The cost of this, yes, I understand. We've put in for $424,000. Yes, there's a note about escalation in there. Guess what? If you look at any public bidding document, there's going to be a note on escalation. Let's talk about public bidding for a moment. We actually don't know what the cost will be until we go out and bid it. It's a risk you have in any project. We are comfortable with the number that we're putting forward here. This was not forgotten. I'm sorry that a board member stood up at a meeting and said that. Only the chairman of the Board of Ed speaks for the Board of Ed. I'm here before you tell you tonight. We voted on this at our June meeting, after you had voted for the capital budget for the year. We didn't vote before then because the plans were not done before then. This had come up earlier, we had passed it, and it had gone to the BET, and the dollar amount was too high, and the plan was too grand. So we sent them back to the drawing board. So this did not come before us until well after that capital budget had been done. If we waited, you would be seeing it this May. So this was not forgotten. There is a reason that the Parks and Rec Department does not actually rent this field. It's one of our few fields they don't rent. It's too small in the condition of the field. We are trying to rectify this for the community. We hope that you will support this, not postpone indefinitely, but actually pass this item here tonight. As the BET has told us, this money is available, ready for use. It's in the fund balance, and it's something that we would like to see done. We can't just keep kicking this. We can't. And if we put it into the other items, I know how this process goes, as do you all. If we put this in, something else comes onto the table for cutting. So I would implore you to pass this tonight, move this project forward, and allow us to try to keep this timeline. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes all speakers who signed up. So I will I'm going to call for the vote now, and I remind you what we are voting on. This is the Finance Committee motion to postpone item 7 indefinitely. If that motion is adopted by majority vote, we will have killed the item. So if you are in favor of approving this, or for what purpose do you rise?
Mr. Bernstein was asked a question about soil samples. Does he intend to address it?
No. I mean, he has had his opportunity to speak, and we are now ready to vote. So we don't, this is not an opportunity to cross-examine people, but to, if people have something to say, they can come up and say it. But, all right, so the vote is on the motion postpone indefinitely. If you are in favor of approving this, then you would have to defeat this motion to postpone, and we would then take a vote on item 7 as it appears on the call. If you are in favor of killing this, by virtue of this motion, you vote yes when the card comes around on the motion to postpone indefinitely. So kill it, vote yes. Defeat the motion to postpone and proceed to vote on the merits, vote no as the card comes around. Is that clear? I ask the district chairs, please mark your voting cards. Finance Committee motion to postpone item 7 indefinitely. Those in favor, 60. Opposed, 102. Abstaining, 1. That motion has failed. Is there any further discussion on item 7? Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards, item number 7, and proceed to poll your delegation. While we are voting, we will continue. Item 11 that now comes before us. May we have the resolution on that item? Peter Tessie, our first selectman.
Item 11, resolved that the following person nominated by the Board of Selectmen be appointed a regular member of the Board of Human Services for a term expiring June 30, 2022. Thomas Petrone.
Thank you. A member please move the adoption of the resolution. Resolution on item 11 has been moved and seconded. John Eddy, Chair of our Appointments Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Appointments Committee voted to postpone this until the March RTM meeting.
All right. You said the March meeting?
Yes.
All right. That being offered on behalf of one of our committees, it does not require a second. All those in favor of postponing item 11 to our March meeting, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion is carried. Howard Richmond, Greenwich Tax Collector.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Item 13, resolved that the representative town meeting for the town of Greenwich establishes a deferment program as provided for in an act establishing federal shutdown affected employees loan program and providing additional assistance to the federal employees. The act as signed into law by Governor Lamont on January 22nd, 2019.
Thank you. Now, this being originally not on our agenda, I'm going to ask for a motion to take up a non-agenda item. Is there such a motion? It has been moved and seconded to take up item 13 tonight. Discussion on that motion to consider a non-agenda item? All right, I will call for a voice vote in the first instance. All those in favor of taking up item 13, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion is carried. garnered a 2/3 majority. All right, now, you heard Mr. Richmond read the resolution. Is there a motion? All right, the resolution on item 13 has been moved and seconded. Mike Basham with the report of the Finance Committee.
Good evening. We met earlier this evening to address this issue. It just came before us as a committee yesterday. Howard joined us. We voted, I believe it was unanimously to approve this. I'll just add, Howard made reference to the fact that the government workers went back to work today.
Yes.
If any of you know any of them, these people that are employed by the federal government, they've got 3 days to sign the documents to allow them to defer paying their taxes for up to 60 days. So if they don't do it by Friday, unless the government gets shut down again, they're out of luck. So if you know anybody that does that, please notify them. Thank you.
Discussion on item 13. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards, item 13, and proceed to poll your delegation. That being the final matter to come before us tonight, we will need to await the resolution of that vote before we can proceed to adjourn. An announcement. Alexis Vulgaris, Moderator Pro Tem, and I are conducting a meeting with the RTM leadership next Monday at 7 p.m., Ms. Vulgaris? 7 p.m. next Monday, correct?
Yes, it is.
And do you have a room for that?
It would be the cone room.
Cone room, 7 o'clock. I sent out an email this morning asking if one of the issues will be the new RTN website. We thank the Technology Advisory Group for the work they've done, and Liz Perry, who will speak about that as an item at the meeting. But I've also asked for any ideas. If there are questions out there, issues that you would like to address, please contact me as soon as you can. All officers of districts and committees are welcome to attend. 7 o'clock, Cone Room, next Monday.
I think that's in there.
I would shit in there. Everybody even knows. Can you feel it? Can you feel it? What's that?
All right, may I have your attention, please? I'm informed that the count on the motion to postpone indefinitely may have had some inaccuracies. I don't think it's going to change the result, but I just want to alert everybody, there is a recount underway.
Thank you very much.
All right, a column of numbers was shifted over, and so no votes were counted as yes votes. All right, so it is different, but as I said, the result's not the same. Let me just remind you, I announced the vote as 60 in favor, 102 opposed, and 1 abstention. In fact, the accurate vote is 47 in favor, 113 opposed, and 3 abstaining. That motion has failed by an even larger margin. All right, we have the result of the vote on item 7, the Hamilton Avenue Field appropriation. Those in favor, 121, opposed 33, abstaining 7. That item is carried. And item 13, the tax extension. Those in favor, 149, opposed 1, abstaining 0. That item is carried. There being no further business to come before the meeting, this meeting stands adjourned.